Hi, this is Alexis GBF from Troublesome Tots. I'm recording this by myself with no people to ask questions, and I just wanted to share some of the key questions that came up in the night weaning video hangout we had. Unfortunately, due to some technical difficulties, a lot of people weren't able to participate, and I'm hoping that if you weren't, this will help give you some answers and maybe some ideas on how to improve things in your own kind of night weaning efforts. So one of the questions that came up that a lot of people were interested in was a mom who basically described she has a 13-month-old breastfed baby who goes to sleep awake on their own. Nursing is separated by at least 20 minutes at bedtime. And yet, despite doing all these wonderful things at bedtime, her child is still waking up at basically 12:30 and 3, demanding to nurse. And if they nurse for 5 minutes at these times, things are great and the baby goes back to sleep and everyone can go back to bed. But when she tries to reduce the amount of time she nurses and gets down to 3 minutes, all hell breaks loose. So the question is, what to do in this situation. So newborn babies or younger babies, obviously they eat because they need to eat. They have small bellies, they can't store a lot of sugar, and their bodies need to continually get fuel because they're growing at an enormous rate, and they need that to continue to thrive and grow and develop. Older babies are capable of a longer fast. They can store glycogen. They can go without food intakes for extended periods of time, but they will continue to eat at night for effectively 3 reasons. One is hunger. So if you've been eating every night at the same time, you're going to expect to eat at the same time every night, and you will legitimately be hungry. I am hungry every day at noon. I can fast for lunch, but I get cranky, so I'm used to eating. If I gradually weaned off lunch, then I could go from breakfast to dinner without an issue, but I'm used to eating then. So it's legitimate hunger. The other is habit. As I said, it's something your body gets used to. Your body habituates around eating on a schedule, and if they've been eating at this schedule for their whole lives, they're going to continue to want to do that. They also will wake up for sleep association issues. So if you are nursing to sleep or sucking at bedtime, so pacifiers can set you up for a night feeding habit because that sucking is there even though there's no food involved. Then you have a sleep association issue. Now this woman we were just talking about is not nursing to sleep, is not nursing near bedtime, so she does not have a sleep association. What is going on there is probably a combination of, it's probably 80% habit and a little bit of hunger. It's hard to say. 5 minutes is really nothing. Most kids nurse a lot longer than that. Truthfully, there are some babies who are just spectacular suckers and they will wolf down, 6 ounces in 5 minutes. But, the fact that 5 minutes is okay, but 3 minutes is starving to death doesn't seem reasonable. That 2 minutes of nursing is making such a vast difference. So, and also we have a 13-month-old baby who, clearly is capable of consuming all of their calories during the day. So my advice would be to get down to 3 minutes for the first feed, which is at 12, and then simply not go in. That's often the easiest and the most direct route. And I feel that a lot of times we get into all these awkward yoga poses trying to avoid crying when what we're really talking about is like 15 minutes of complaining. So if it were me, when I would, when you get down to like 2-3 minutes of feed, I would be like, great, then we're done. Because what we're really doing at that point is having a snack, and we can go back to sleep without a snack. But sometimes that feels really inauthentic to your parenting. So if that is really something you're just not okay with, then the option that you could consider would be to, well, you have a couple options. One is to send in dad or your partner, whoever that might be, as we sometimes generously call them the milkless boob. So send in the milkless boob, and the milkless boob can spend a few minutes sort of using their words, hey buddy, not time to eat, it's time for sleeping. Check to make sure there's no poop in the diaper, that kind of thing. Little back rub. You don't want to stay around too much longer than 2 or 3 minutes. You don't want to stick around till they're falling asleep. But, it's a nice, gentle way to kind of, say, hey, we're still here, we love you, it's time to sleep, we'll see you in the morning. Especially at 13 months. I mean, keep in mind that your 13-month-old may only have a handful of words, but their receptive language, their ability to understand your words is spectacular. So that kind of reinforcement can be helpful. Another option that can sometimes be appealing is to put a sippy of water in the crib. And I'm a big fan of a sippy of water. It gives kids some control to say, hey, if you're thirsty or you want something to drink, here you go. It's harmless. There's no dental issues. And if you have a valve in there, it doesn't leak. So great. There you go. So sometimes that can be a nice option. And you can talk about it at bedtime and say, hey, you know what? Mommy's milk is closed at night, but here is some water. And if you wake up and you're thirsty, then we're going to put this in here for you here in the corner and, have at it. So we've got we've got fully ignore, which honestly 99% of the time is just far less dramatic than you think and far more effective than you think. We've got sending in the milkless boob. We've got sippies of water. I'm less a fan of this, but it is an option, is to put in a small, to bring in a small, like tiny little bit of, breast milk or formula or milk in a sippy. I don't love that plan simply because, so the nice thing about the sippy is it's a far less rewarding than nursing. I mean, nursing is great, and you're cuddling, and mom is there. It's kind of like the pinnacle of soothing. So if that's an option, most babies will take that option and continue to take that option for many, many months. A sippy is far less rewarding, but it still kind of helps you not feel like you're neglecting your starving child. And again, I don't think a baby who can nurse for 3 minutes isn't starving. But, if you're feeling conflicted about it, it gives you that option. I don't like it. It's effectively just another version of bottle propping where you prop the bottle and walk out the door. It's not great for their teeth. I mean, really at 1 year, you don't want more milk sugars on their teeth at night. So I don't like to encourage that. But as a short-term solution, let's say for a couple of days, just to transition from mom coming in to no one coming in, if that helps ease that transition and make it a calmer affair, that's something you could consider. But that would be like my least favorite option. So I would do that at the first feed of the night, which in this case is at 12, and then I would just basically replicate that same plan at 3. Now what often happens is when you get rid of that first feed by whichever method, the second feed often slides up. So if you have a baby who's eating at 12:30 and 3, they might start waking up at 2:30 or 2. That's okay. What's not okay is another feeding camping on at the end of the morning. So like, adding on a 5:30 feeding. So if in this scenario, morning is 6:30, hypothetically, then when you wean off one night feed, if you have 2 night feeds, you wean off one, you've got 1 remaining, be pretty firm about not letting another one sneak on in the morning. So if our morning feed is 6:30, then that's when it is. Not 5:30, not 5:15. And there's no food prior to then. One of the things that I really took to heart, I spent literally 3 hours with this professor from Stanford Medical School when I was in California last week, and he kept reiterating the fact that babies are born eating and sleeping around the clock, evenly distributed around the clock. There's no schedule, there's no day-night. They just kind of, because that's what life is in the womb, and that the first few months are really us imposing our normative schedule on them. So we sleep at night, we are awake during the day, we eat here, and this is really just this is just a continuation of that, to say, this is not when we eat, this is when we eat. And when babies are older, it's both exhausting to keep eating at night, it's bad for their teeth, and it really is habit. So I would be pretty firm about your expectations and offer those opportunities to eat during the day. I would also be mindful that solids, which everyone's excited about because it's finally a source of food that's not, it's nice to have that option. Most solids that kids are eating, at least when they start, are basically water and fiber and calorie light. So most baby food is just for fun, but it's not filling. I mean, it is filling, it will make them feel full, but it's not high calorie. So they're still going to need a lot of calories from liquids. So be mindful about making sure that, that applesauce and the sweet potato is an add-on to what it is that you're, feeding them in terms of breast milk or formula, but it's not a replacement for. Because the breast milk and the formula is really where the calories and the nutrients are coming from, and the pears and the sweet potatoes are just kind of fun and that kind of thing. Now, a 13-month-old could be eating a lot of high-calorie food like hamburger and noodles and such, and if that's the case, awesome, but but don't be mindful of them kind of tanking up on like watermelon, which is just a delightful pink watery snack. It's just no calories. All right, so that's what I would do for a 13-month-old. Another question that came up was the idea that it was I think about a 1-year-old who was still nursing at 4:30 in the morning, and the mom said, well, you know, he'll stop when he's ready. And, you know, without proselytizing too much about this, I would just be mindful of this kind of the mythology of when they're ready. And I feel like I see this kind of this mythology, and I call it a mythology because I really think it is, kind of coming from like people, like this very heavy attachment parenting kind of philosophy that says, well, they're not ready yet. And if you're trying to force them to do something and they're not ready, then by definition, you're kind of mean and maybe a little selfish. And I get nervous about that idea because the truth is, we don't know. I mean, this concept of when they're ready is kind of sort of meaningless. They're eating because they have a habit of eating. They're perfectly capable of fasting, but they're used to eating. And somebody who's used to eating at a certain time will continue to do so unless options are really put forth and adhered to. And there's plenty of kids who are night nursing at their 3rd birthday, and I think that waiting until they're ready is a fair statement when you have a newborn who isn't capable developmentally of fasting that long. I mean, of course, it's an unrealistic expectation for, you know, a 2-month-old to fast for 12 hours. You know, when your kid is 1 or 1.5, it's absolutely a realistic request to say, you know what, this is not good for you and it's not good for me. It also removes the ability for most of us to get an uninterrupted 6 hours of sleep. And as adults, this is kind of the bare minimum, 6 hours uninterrupted to function. There's a lot of kind of health effects from loss of sleep, and sleeping in 4-hour chunks and then waking up and then sleeping another 2-hour chunk is not a healthy way to continue to live. So one of our goals to take care of our bodies, which is what we need to do as adults, is to look at our day and go, how do we get minimally 6 hours? Minimum is like the low bar. So just to kind of, you know, function physically and mentally, you need to hit that 6-hour bar. So it's kind of waiting until they're ready to drop the 430 feet on their own is, I wouldn't recommend it for you, and I would question the belief that they're doing it because they're not ready versus they're doing it because it's habit and they have been doing it, and that habit will persist as long as, you know, you sort of enable it to. So I get a little squidgy about that whole idea. One person asked, what about my milk drying up if I night wean? And this is kind of another sort of mythology that has gone out there. I had low nursing issues. I had, you know, lactation consultants and medical grade pumps and drugs and the whole shaboo, and it was a big mess. So there are people who have low supply who have concerns about, am I offering enough stimulation for my breast to continue to produce milk? We are in the vast minority. If you have been successfully nursing your child without issue or indication that there is a supply problem for 6+ months, there is no reason to believe you will have issues with your supply drying up when you stop nursing at night. In fact, in many times the opposite is true, in that the more we're sleeping, and sleep is restorative, our bodies need sleep, the better our milk supply is, because when we're exhausted, dehydrated, and sleep deprived, that's when we tend to have more sleep issues, more supply issues. So I am not an IBCLC. If you have concerns about it, I would seek personal help with someone who could help address this for you, preferably an IBCLC locally who is recommended to you by a friend or a pediatrician. But for the most part, healthy adult women over 6 months who've been nursing successfully can night wean without cause for worry. You know, and you're still nursing and pumping and doing whatever you need to during the day. So just to recap briefly, I was going to say, when you're ready to night wean, my top recommendation, whether it's bottle or breast, is to reduce the amount that you're letting them have. bottles, it's much easier. Instead of making an 8-ounce bottle, you make a 6-ounce bottle. Instead of that, you make a 4-ounce bottle, and you kind of go from there. For nursing, it's basically just popping them off sooner. If you get down to a couple of minutes and you have a baby who really protests when you try to pop them off, quote unquote, before they're ready, that to me is a really good signal that what you're dealing with is not hunger but a sleep association. It's a baby who's yelling at you because they're used to falling asleep while nursing, and you've taken that away, and they're like, hey, I'm not asleep yet. So when you get a lot of protesting when you pop them off, I would start to look at, okay, why do we still have the sleep association where nurse equals sleep, and how do we need to change things up, generally at bedtime or at the first feeding of the night, to help teach our baby to fall asleep without nursing. And, you know, a baby who can fall asleep without nursing is a baby who's going to successfully night wean. A baby who is nursing solidly to sleep at bedtime is going to fight you on it all night long. So look at bedtime or possibly the first nursing session of the night and kind of see what changes we need to make to help break that association and teach baby to fall asleep without nursing. Because once we've kind of separated nursing from sleep, that creates at least the potential for us to successfully night wean. Whereas a baby who associates nursing with sleeping very closely is going to fight you tooth and nail and make it a really arduous and long-term process. Okay, I've talked to my computer enough by myself. I will stream this to YouTube and share it with you guys, and I wish you all the best in your night weaning efforts.